Welcome to Cliffe House. You're standing in front of this magnificent entrance, and if you were a guest to the house you would have come in through this broad entranceway here from the main road, and the carriage would have dropped you here and then carried on to the coach house, which is we'll see later on. Unfortunately, a matter of a couple of weeks ago, this new bell was put on. Until then there was a bell on here which said night and day, and this was so that the butler or whoever else was in the house on duty at that time, if it was at night, people would ring the night bell. If it was in the day, it would ring the day bell. The day bell rang in the kitchen, the night bell rang in the butler's bedroom and also in the lounge upstairs, the servants' lounge. Hopefully the door will be open. Yes, it is. Please come in. As you come into the main doorway, please look down and to your left and your right. On the side panels you'll see some scenes, we think from Scottish Highland scenes. The one on your right, my left, has been restored about in the late 90s, I think it was. It took many weeks to restore it. This one has never been restored. We couldn't raise the funds to restore this one. Hopefully it will be in the centre. There are a few pale patches on it. That's where the restorer just put a little bit of cleaning fluid on just to see what it was like underneath. But otherwise that one is as it was painted. The floor, I've got again very attractive tiles, but these were apparently available via a catalogue. You could actually pick these out of a catalogue, much like you can tiles today. So they are quite standard. Perhaps what is the best feature of all though is this beautiful screen here. Best seen at night when you're coming in from this doorway. Obviously in the daytime it looks better from the other side when you've got the light behind it. And then as you go through you'll see a really beautiful arch which has been recently, or fairly recently, restored to the original colours. They actually scraped back the paint to find the original colours and then went to the Victorian colour books to get the original colours. It took ages and ages to do. We did have a Kirklees worker doing it, but he was taken off piecework and put onto day work when it was done, because he was literally up there with a tiny little paintbrush doing it all. That arch there took several days just to paint that arch, so not very cost effective. I'm glad they did it. Okay, if you'd like to come forward. If you look towards the doors now, you can see the effect of the light shining behind them, and that would be the effect at night time if you were on the other side of the doors, of course. This area is probably the most, well, in inverted commas, damaged section of the house, in the sense that it's got all this modern clutter in it, which wouldn't have been here. In fact, it wasn't here up until around about 2000, that sort of time is when this started to come in. The house has actually been hardly damaged at all, apart from things like fire screens, which you will see here and there, but almost all the original features are intact. These lights you can see in the ceilings. There's one in the entrance porch, and you can see another one upstairs. Were going to be taken away to Tolson Museum in the 80s when we had our rewire at that point. They said that they were far too good to be left in a house like this. They'd get damaged by children, even though the children have been coming in here since 1947. And they weren't going to rewire them at all. They were going to put strip lights into this. But after a considerable fight, we managed to get them to rewire it and to leave them here. So we were quite pleased about that. That's cool. Yeah. The rooms on your left here and on my left and on my right here have changed over the course of history. This was the original dining room. It then became the lounge. That was the original lounge, that then became the dining room, and then it's swapped over a number of times since then. And at the moment, this is now reverted to the lounge, and this, although it says James City Lounge on there, this is reverted to the dining room. So we'll go into what is now the dining room, but was the lounge, and there was the dining room before. Okay, so this is the dining room which you can see at the moment, and it's more or less as it was in the 1930s. The picture on the far wall there is 1931. Up until that point it was full of heavy Victorian furniture with lots of decoration everywhere, very dark wood. They then ripped all that out in around about 1930 and had absolutely the most modern furniture they could get at the time. So that sort of thing is still going on today, of course. You get fashions in furniture. Dark brown furniture is again out of fashion at the moment. You almost can't give it away hardly. A few years ago, it might be worth several £100s. So at the moment, you can see it's fairly bare. Originally, there were, as you can see from the picture on there was mirrors on the wall, there was paintings on the wall. The small photograph we have above the fireplace there is actually James Senior, who built the house. And the house was originally started in 1888, and it was finished in, I think it was 1890. Well, the first rateable value is 1891. The house was actually built in two slightly different stages. The village room, which we'll see in a minute or two, was built slightly after the rest of the house was finished. And I think it must have been an afterthought, because you can see where the house originally finished, and that was tacked on at the end. But it was obviously tacked on virtually at the same time as the house was built, but it's a slight addition. The house is very much divided into two sections. We're in what was the family section, the guest section, but then there's another half of the house which the servants were in, where the work was done, and their own bedrooms on the top floor. They obviously had to come into this room and all the other family rooms, and that's why we've got two doors here. This was the door that the family would have used, and this is the door where they came through from the kitchen. And originally there was another door just here, which you can see where the hinges were, and that was so that that door would be kept closed, so that the people coming in from the kitchen couldn't be seen by anybody in that part of the house. So the noise wouldn't have gone through, and also they couldn't be seen. Servants were very much, got a bit like children, I think, in Victorian times. Shouldn't be seen if possible, and definitely not heard. So that's why the children, generally, not all Victorian families, but most rich Victorian families, were handed over to nannies and things for most of the day. So the families wouldn't have been very much involved in raising their own children. Right, if we come through, this is probably one of my favourite rooms of the house. This is the butler's pantry. It's all original. Every cupboard, every wooden service, apart from this Formica one here, which was put in for modern health and safety conditions, is as it was in Victorian times. And this is the only room in the house that's also got double glazing. And we think, well, there's two possible reasons. It might partly have been to keep this part cool, but also there was a security possible reason, which I'll go into in a moment. The cupboard here, which is full of crockery and things, and probably always would have done, is actually sitting above a safe. The safe is in the cellar, and it was on a hydraulic ram, basically like a bicycle pump, except that instead of pumping air into it, you pumped water into it. So water went into a cylinder. On top of the cylinder was a piston. On top of the piston was a safe. The safe is approximately 6 foot high, and it's about this wide, and it's got just one big door. And what happened was you pumped water into the hydraulic ram. The safe came up into this cupboard. Now obviously you had to take everything out of the cupboard for it to work. I believe it took quite a few hours to come up, and if you take everything out of this cupboard and look down through the floor, you can see the top of the safe, and there is somewhere downstairs in the cellar where you can crawl through a tiny hole in the wall, and you can actually stand next to the safe, which I've done. We used to take children down there at one time. So that would come up through here, and presumably they kept all the silver plate, the things that they would only use on very special occasions. Okay. Everything in this house was absolutely top quality, so all the wood in the ordinary rooms are oak, and then as we go upstairs you'll see that the bedrooms have all got a different type of timber in the door. But this screen here, which is remarkable also, hides pipes and wiring, and is ornate cast iron, painted black obviously, and originally all the pipes would have been lead, all the cables were black, so that it was absolutely impossible to see anything through it. Now we've got white cables through there, so you can actually see them through, but originally you couldn't see anything through that there. So it's one of the details, little details of the house that are very special. Just above your heads you can see a pipe coming out of the wall. That's one of the original gas pipes where the gas lighting system operated from. There are very few traces of that left in the house. Okay, so we're now in the village room, and this is the part of the house that was built on almost, we think, almost as an afterthought, probably in about 1890, 1891. When you look outside, you can see the original stonework was here on the outside wall, and there's a trace of it, I think, around the corner, which you can see as well. Certainly on the outside there is. An unusual room, really. You've got these very high ceilings, masses of skylights, obviously to get as much light as possible. These air vents here, and also these are air vents. And if you look at them in detail, there's the little twist on the side which operate open and shut them, is just here, is the shape of a fist. So it's that little details like that which make the house special. And you'll see those again down in the cellar. And in fact, in every room in the house there are air vents, and there are pipes that go from the cellar right up to the top floor to allow air to circulate through the house. So the Victorians were very definite about thinking that, well, it's probably a very good idea actually, that houses should be well aired to keep them healthy. So these were air vents. One of the reasons why it had these air vents in the ceiling was because this room would have been, as we say, the village room. Probably the only people that ever came in here were men. Men smoked cigars, pipes and cigarettes, and so this would have been a real fog in here with the smoke. These vents hadn't been here to extract as much as possible. I suppose with the high ceilings as well, much of it went up there as well. This is the, I think as far as I can remember, this is the only black fireplace in the house. Or every room in the house, or in the family's part of the house, has a different marble fireplace. Some of the bedroom ones are slightly less spectacular, particularly the children's room, but they're all different and all very, very nice. They also are very efficient. Take this away, yeah. You can see the cast metal, cast iron fire there, and they all throw out tremendous amount of heat. They're well designed fireplaces. If anybody's still got an open fire in their house, or a pig in the house with open fire, there are those which seem to throw out no heat. You can stand like this and still feel cold. In this house, you stand about here, otherwise you scorch the back of your legs, which is very nice in winter. Okay, we're going to go up onto the first floor now, which is where the family bedrooms were. And this is a fantastic staircase all the way up. Really almost like a church window there. And very appropriate to its present use as a centre for children, because the stained glass windows have got hand painted, we think hand painted at least, centres which are all environmental themes. So they're birds and plants, most of them that you find in the area. Some of the birds are quite difficult to identify, some are fairly obvious. You've got to remember that the colours have faded over time as well, so that they're not the original colours. But there are birds that I'm sure most people can identify, as well as some which you might have to scratch your head over. This, by the way, is not part of Cliffe House. This came out of Ballyroyd House, which was originally a house owned by Kirklees as a teachers' training centre. And when they sold it, they bought this to Cliffe House. This is what is now room 1. This is originally the children's bedroom. It's the simplest of the bedrooms. It's got no panelling on the walls, plain oak windows, plain oak doors, and a relatively modest fireplace. Unfortunately, we've lost most of the tiles. They were here originally when I first came, so I'm not sure if we've still got them stored somewhere, but there were 1 or 2 broken ones. I think they've taken them off because they were loose and therefore potentially dangerous with children in here picking at them. Some nice tiles on the wall here though, with birds and things in. Notice the 2 doors, the door we came in and then the door on my right here. The door on the right goes onto the servants' stairs, which was the way that the nanny would have come in and out to look after and check on the children without going into the main part of the house. Okay, so we're now into the main family bedrooms. Obviously the screen behind you wouldn't have been there, that's the recent fire screen. So we've got one major main bedroom here, and one here. I can't remember which way round it was now, but I'm sure the little booklet that you will all buy at the door for £5 will tell you. But this one I think was Mr. Senior's bedroom, and that one was Mrs. Senior's bedroom. I think this is going back to when Edward was here rather than when James was here, but I'm not sure about that absolutely. When I first came here in 1982, where it says showers on there was a bathroom, didn't have showers in it, and the bath was so big that you could lay in it and float, which I've done on many occasions. This room here was really a dressing room originally, we think. It's as big as many modern houses, double bedrooms. We've had 3 single beds in there on occasions when it was a teacher's staff room here. We'll go into the bedroom 2 here, that's probably the easiest one to go into. Okay, so this is one of the major bedrooms. A more elaborate fireplace, beautiful tiles again. Again, the fire itself has been blocked out because of soot falls. An interesting little feature that almost covered up by the bunk beds now is that little rectangular cubby hole there. That was where the internal telephone, or one of the internal telephones was. This is obviously for the family to ring for staff, and the upstairs in the servants' quarters there is another one of these. In fact, there's 2 of these, one in the butler's room and one in what we think was the servants' lounge upstairs. That door there goes through to the dressing room that we were mentioning from outside, and the wood here is fiddleback sycamore, which is, as its name suggests, the wood which is used for violins. Okay, you can see the original light fitments there. There's never been lights in my time in those fitments. When they were taken out, we're not quite sure. Obviously these modern lights and fire alarms and so forth are all new. You can just see the air vents we were talking about downstairs. These are a continuation of the air vents that you saw down in the village room, which go down into all the ground floor rooms and in the cellar and into the upstairs as well. And they come out on the roof, and there's great big copper domes over the top of them on the roof. They weren't like that originally, obviously. They'd been covered up. I think there's little bits of plywood being inserted in there. When I worked at the house, they were still the ornate grills. But on occasions, jackdaws and starlings would get into these domes on the roof and then nest in them, and then sometimes fall down, and you'd come into a room, even down as far as what is now the office, and you'd see a beak sticking through the grill or a leg sticking through the grill. You couldn't do anything about it. It would just stay there until it eventually died and then dried. So there are all sorts of birds and things in the chimneys and also in these air vent grills. We once had a soot fall in the village room before we used the fire, and a whole bird skeleton came out of it. So before we had it street, that was. Philip Senior said the children, as they grew past the nursery stage and became older, used this room as well when the guests weren't here. And then there was another guest room, the smallest of the bedrooms, just around the corner there. These 2 rooms, certainly that one has got a sink into it. I don't think this one has. I can't remember now.
No, that one's not.
No. Yeah, this one has got a small fireplace. You can go in and have a look in a moment. And the other one's got a small fireplace in it as well. This one's got another very large fireplace. So we'll have a quick look in this one. This is a good illustration of what I was saying earlier about the birds' nests in the chimneys and in the air vents. Looking at the fireplace here, it would appear that we've got remains of a bird's nest, or part of its construction. Obviously the first bit's dropped down. Here probably a jackdaw, I would imagine. This room is looking over the front lawn, so we're facing south when we look out that way. And then this way we're looking out towards the front gate. So this is again a picture taken as the one we saw downstairs, 1931. So you can see the sort of furniture that the house would have had in the bedrooms in those days. Again, in Victorian times, much heavier furniture, big, solid, very dark timber, mahogany and other timbers. Late Victorian times tend to be quite heavy furniture. So basically this room had 2 beds, little dressing table, or perhaps 2 dressing tables. They would have been, this house had water actually in the bathrooms, certainly in the latter part of the time the family was here. We're not sure whether when the family first came in, whether they had water actually in the house upstairs, or whether they had people carrying water up, you know, washstands and bowls and things. We don't know. Obviously in early Victorian times, this is quite a late Victorian house, so we had water all the time. In early Victorian times there was no water generally on anywhere but the first floor, if you had water at all in the house in terms of taps and things. So the servants would have carried water up and downstairs, hot water and cold water into the washstands. Obviously servants had to carry all the coal and everything up the fires, they had to clear out the fires, take it all away again during the day. But they wouldn't be normally allowed in these rooms when anybody was in them, obviously. You can see this is an enormous room for a bedroom. Photographs, when the displays go up, of the grounds as it was in 1982 when I first arrived. When you looked out of this window you could see right up to the Sovereign, because that belt of trees there, which are beech trees, was cut on a yearly basis down to about 6 foot high. So roughly the height of the rhododendron in front of it there. So you could see all the way up, and when you're coming down the hill you could see the impressive Cliffe House as you're all the way down the hill as you came down. Obviously as money became shorter and shorter in the authority, the amount of cutting, trimming of the hedges and all the trees, etc. Became less and less. So when we developed all the woodlands and ponds and things up there, it was decided to let that go, and so they've become back into trees. But that hedge, or that beech hedge, which has now become trees, was planted at the same time as the house was built. So they are actually quite old, those trees, although the trunks are only this thick because they've never been allowed to grow. One of the things that's very easy to miss when you're walking around the house are all the tiny features which, if you're looking where you're going, you don't see at all. So just above your heads here, you've got this little piece of carving, which is insignificant in a way, but it's just a little detail which adds to the features of the house. And you'll find those little features all the way around. On the underneath the banister here, on the metalwork, you've got these scrolls, flower-shaped leaves. Again, they're all little details which just make it special. This is a room which has also changed its use, as we said. At the moment it's already a conference room, but it's gone back to being sort of a into the lounge. It has been until recently the dining room, and it was the dining room in Victorian times when the family were here, and in the up till 1947. These were put on when it became a dining room. So these are finger plates, so that when you've got greasy fingers, you don't make a mark on the door. They're not as well polished as when we were here. No, they were always absolutely, I'm sure when Joy was here as well, they were absolutely sparkling.
The jobs I remember the ladies doing.
So these would be polished on a daily basis when I worked here. But again, it is directly opposite the door to the kitchen, so it was quite convenient to turn this into the dining room afterwards. I think the family decided to make this into the dining room because what is now the dining room is obviously a nice sunny room. It faces south, it's got a nice view, it's a big room, and so that's the room they spent more time in. Why spend all your time in a room which looks north and east, which is a cold room in the house, and particularly once these trees develop, so it's shaded from virtually the whole day. So I think that's why they turned it round, and this is plenty big enough for even a dining table which could hold 20, 30 people in, so that's why. Underneath here is a nice timber floor as well, which has at various times has been exposed, like the one in the what is now the dining room. Okay. Oh, I didn't mention the ceiling rose, but those people that are in here, again, this is probably one of the most ornate ceiling roses that is still left. It's nice that they're still being left. It would have been great if we could have actually put the lights back in. This was another room that they wanted to put strip lights in. And in what is now the dining room, they wanted to put strip lights in there. And in the end, I mean, these lights aren't particularly nice. They always remind me of 1970s motorway cafes, don't they? But we actually had to go and buy ourselves glass globes that we put in there with sort of Victorian type patterns on them, pictures on them. They've gone now. I think they've got broken over the years. Can't remember what's in there now, but that was the sort of official line. You know, you put in nice bright lights. So, they were really vandals.